Taipei, 21 May 2014. A weekday afternoon on the city's Blue Line metro. The train pulled out of Longshan Temple Station, picking up speed underground. Inside one of the carriages, a slim, soft-spoken, 21-year-old university student stood up, opened his backpack, and pulled out 2 long kitchen knives. The next 4 minutes would change Taiwan forever. His name was Cheng Chieh, a second-year student at Tunghai University in Taichung. Quiet, polite, from a stable middle-class family. Teachers remembered him as average. Classmates barely remembered him at all. By the time the train reached Jiangxi Station, 4 passengers were dead and 22 were injured. The carriage was silent, except for the screech of the brakes. Survivors later described the same disturbing detail. Cheng didn't shout. He didn't rage. He moved methodically through the carriage, stabbing in short, deliberate strokes. When passengers fled toward the next car, he followed at a walking pace. One survivor said his expression never changed. He looked, she said, as if he were doing homework. The train arrived at Jiangxi Station. Cheng tried to get off. He was tackled to the platform by a group of passengers and station staff. Police arrived within 2 minutes. He surrendered without resistance. The first thing he reportedly said to officers was that he had been planning this since he was a child. Across the city, the news spread within minutes. Live news helicopters circled the station. The MRT briefly shut down. Within an hour, journalists at Cheng's apartment in Taichung had pieced together a chilling backstory. Cheng had reportedly told friends years earlier that he wanted to do something big before he turned 25. No one had taken him seriously. Investigators searched Cheng's room. They found notebooks, journals, and online chat histories going back to his early teens. Page after page of plans for a public attack. Diagrams of subway maps. Lists of weapons. Friends he had confided in admitted with regret that they had thought he was just venting. They had been wrong for almost a decade. Cheng Chieh did not look like a killer. He was thin, bookish, soft-spoken. He had no criminal record. He had never used drugs. He drank rarely. But for at least 8 years, in private, he had been quietly rehearsing the day. When asked at trial why he had done it, he answered with chilling brevity. He said he had wanted to die and to be remembered. Taiwan was unprepared for an attack like this. The MRT, the city's clean and efficient subway, was treated as a symbol of public order. Within 48 hours, the network installed additional surveillance cameras and new emergency stop procedures. Plainclothes officers began patrolling carriages during peak hours. The simple, trusting architecture of public space had been quietly altered. Cheng's trial was extraordinary in its speed. Taiwanese law typically allowed many years of appeals in capital cases. Public anger, however, was overwhelming. The court system processed his case through 3 levels in under 20 months. He was convicted of 4 counts of murder and 22 counts of attempted murder, and sentenced to death. On 10th of May 2016, less than 2 years after the attack, Cheng Chieh was executed by firing squad. His parents had requested no body. They had requested no public ceremony. Taiwan's Ministry of Justice released a brief statement and nothing more. The speed of the execution was, itself, controversial. Anti-death penalty groups argued the system had bowed to public emotion rather than legal review. But the harder questions outlived him. How does a young man plan a public attack for nearly a decade without a single warning sign reaching the people who could intervene? Cheng had told friends. They had not believed him. He had written about it online. The posts were buried in obscure forums. The systems designed to detect threats, schools, family, mental health services, had simply never crossed his path. Cheng's case became a touchstone in Taiwanese public discourse. Schools rolled out new mental health screening programs. Universities trained staff to take confessional language about violence seriously. Public transport networks across East Asia studied the 4-minute timeline of the attack and hardened their procedures. The lessons were practical, and they came at unbearable cost. Survivors carried the weight forward. Many were unable to ride the metro for months. Some never returned to it. A handful spoke publicly, asking that the attack be remembered not as a horror story, but as a turning point. Annual moments of silence were held at Jiangzichui Station for several years. Some of the survivors quietly volunteered with mental health organizations afterward, hoping to spot the next Cheng before he became one. There is a hard lesson hidden in Cheng's biography. He had not been mistreated. He had not been abused. He came from a stable home with caring parents. Most public theories of mass violence assume a clear catalyst: abuse, addiction, ideology. Cheng had none of these. He had only an interior life that had grown in private, towards something the people around him simply could not see. Forensic psychologists who studied his journals identified three repeated themes: a sense of being invisible, a wish to die meaningfully rather than ordinarily, and a fascination with mass attention. These three together, what some researchers now call the meaning through violence triad, turn out to recur in cases of public attackers across many countries. Cheng's documents have since become part of multiple academic case studies on early warning signs. Why didn't his friends report him? Because they didn't think anyone would believe them. Because they didn't want to cause embarrassment. Because Cheng had been talking about it for so long that it had stopped sounding like a threat and started sounding like a personality quirk. Familiarity dulls warning signs. That, perhaps, is the single most repeated lesson in mass attack research. Why didn't the system catch him? Because the system, in 2014, was not built to receive low-grade warnings about a quiet university student in Taichung. There was no equivalent of a confidential threat assessment hotline at his university. There was no formal process for friends to report concerns about a peer's online writings. Both have since been put in place. Their existence is, in part, his legacy. The attack reshaped Taipei subtly. Backpacks are still allowed on the metro, but spot checks are common. Public address announcements remind passengers of emergency button locations. CCTV coverage on each carriage is now uniform. Most riders on most days do not think about the 4 minutes of 21st May 2014. The system thinks about it for them. There is a final analytical thread worth pulling. Cheng wanted to be remembered. The Taiwanese press, after the initial wave of coverage, agreed by collective convention to stop printing his face on news front pages. Some commentators called this the no notoriety approach. The question of whether public attention itself fuels public attackers remains open, but the editors of 2014 quietly acted on the answer they suspected. Case analysis. Cheng Chieh's attack is now a textbook case in three areas: public transport security, university threat assessment, and media policy on attacker notoriety. Each of these has changed, in Taiwan and beyond, partly because of him. The hardest part of his case is not what he did, but how invisible he managed to be while planning it. The systems that catch loud people did not catch a quiet one. Practical lessons for individuals. If a friend talks repeatedly about wanting to do something violent, even jokingly, take the conversation seriously. Do not assume someone else will report it. Most universities now have anonymous reporting channels. Use them. They exist precisely because of cases like this. A single phone call from one of Cheng Chieh's classmates years earlier might have changed everything. Practical lessons for systems. Build channels people will actually use. Train staff, teachers, RAs, transport workers, family doctors to take low-grade warnings seriously and route them to the right place. Most threats never become reality, but the cost of routing one false alarm correctly is small. The cost of missing one real warning, as Taipei learnt in 2014, is unbearable. There is one final uncomfortable lesson. Most people who hurt others did not hide it well. They hid it just well enough to slip through the gap between systems that did not yet talk to each other. Closing those gaps between schools and clinics, between online platforms and friends, between transport networks and emergency services is slow, expensive, ongoing work. It is also, unmistakably, the work that saves lives. The lesson learned is this: in a healthy society, the loudest signals get attention. Cheng Chieh's case is a reminder that the quietest signals matter just as much. Watch the people who say nothing. Watch the people who say strange things calmly. Most of them are simply private. A very few of them are something else. And the system we build every day decides which of them we manage to reach in time.